Welcome to week 9 of our course. We're going to do something a little bit different in the assignment. You'll notice that your assignment is to ask a question, and you can refer to Plato or Aristotle. And I'm going to comb through these questions and try to respond to a few of them in a video that I will then post on the class website. So that there won't be the same kind of discussion that we normally have in most weeks. Today I'm going to talk about Aristotle. I'll have 2 lectures this week, a major voice in the virtue tradition. We've already referred to him a little bit. Aristotle we classify under naturalistic ethics. Remember that naturalism says that ethical truth or the right thing to do is revealed in nature. And there are 2 important versions, very different versions of naturalism. Historically, Aristotle was the main voice of naturalism, but in the current century, in the last 100 years, a new version of naturalism has emerged called sociobiology or evolutionary ethics. The 2 versions differ greatly about the notion of a telos, or a final cause. In Aristotelian philosophy, to understand anything, you need to understand its 4 causes, and we will talk about that a little later. And in modern mechanistic philosophy, people say we don't need to believe in telos, or in plural, telos, or final causes. So let's start with Aristotle. He lives 384 to 322. He was a student of Plato, just as Plato was a student of Aristotle. As Plato was a student of Socrates. Got to get this right. The human telos, according to Aristotle, is happiness, or it's the word that we translate happiness, eudaimonia. The first thing, and even Aristotle says this, we need to distinguish happiness from pleasure. People often do things that are not pleasurable, that they know will not be pleasurable, because they believe they will produce happiness. Happiness cannot be reduced to pleasure. And the way we achieve happiness is to achieve an overall good life. And in order to do that, we need to have virtues. And Aristotle, because he's a naturalist, he's finding the truth by observing the world, spends a lot of time observing people in civilized society. Many of his observations are about human beings. And so he introduces what we call the theory of, or the golden mean, that most virtues come in between 2 vices. And so I've made a table that you can look at on the screen. And it's interesting to note not just the virtues and the vices, but the situations in life that Aristotle notices. And these are only a few. He's very empirical in the sense that he pays a lot of attention to what's going on in the world around him. Facing death, what would be the right virtue? A soldier faces death. What would be the right virtue? Everybody knows. Courage. Everybody knows if you don't have courage, you're a coward. Aristotle says that's too simple. If you don't have enough willingness to face danger, you are a coward. But what if you have too much willingness to face danger? Imagine the soldier who gets to the battlefield and he says, whoopee, there's the enemy. And he races out, leaving all of his friends behind him, to meet the enemy. Does he have courage? He's very willing to face danger. No. Aristotle says he's foolhardy, he's stupid. That's not true courage. An over-willingness to face danger is not a virtue. And so this goes through the other situations. And we have some here on that I've picked out. How about physical needs like sleep or eating or desire for sex? The virtue, Aristotle says, is temperance. If you go in too much for these things, now notice we have multiple words for going in too much. Gluttony for too much food, drunkenness for too much wine. But there's an old-fashioned English word, profligacy. A profligate is the person who goes in for all of these or many of these things too much. And Aristotle says, notice that in regard to physical desires, I don't know the word for too little. Do you know the word? Not in Greek, but in English? I don't know the word. But Aristotle says, even if we don't have a right word for it, there is a vice of the person who just, beautiful food, nah. Beautiful sex, nah. Drink, sleep. None of these desires motivates this person. We're not talking about an ascetic who holds back from his desires. We're just a person who says, I just don't care. If you can think of a word, send it to me. In the matter of giving money, Aristotle says, and he has an argument for why in any society with private property, there will be a virtue of giving money. Because if you have private property, some people will work hard or be lucky or be smart and they will get money. And other people will be stupid or lazy or unlucky and they will not have money. And they will both have children. So that some people will undeservedly inherit money and other people will undeservedly inherit poverty. So in any society with private property, there will be a virtue of generosity. It's an interesting argument. And if you don't give enough, you're stingy. And if you give too much, you know the word, although many of you don't associate it with this, because of the story in the New Testament. There's a story that Jesus tells about two brothers, one who inherits from his father, and goes off and spends the money and pretty soon runs out and he has to come back and ask his father's forgiveness. And we call this the story of the prodigal son. Why is it called prodigal? Because he gave too much. That's what prodigality means. In English, the giving too much is prodigality, and so that is also a vice. In pursuit of honor, Aristotle says that you ought to have pride. If you go in for honor too much, you are vain. That's vanity. If you go in for honor too little, you have humility, and that's a vice. Now, some of you are thinking, I hope you are thinking, wait a second. The New Testament says that pride is the vice and humility is the virtue. So you need to ask yourself, is the New Testament talking about the same thing that Aristotle is? If so, which view makes more sense? I'm not going to try to answer this for you. I want to draw you into the question. When is pride a virtue, as Aristotle says it is, and when is pride a vice, as the New Testament says it is? Is humility a virtue? What kind of humility would be a vice? In social relations, Aristotle says we ought to be friendly. If we flatter our friends and suck up to them, that's a vice. If we're sulky and don't even try to have friends, that's a vice as well. If some people are going to pursue honors, other people have to give honors. And we actually have honors at George Fox at graduation. Some of you will wear gold tassels and some of you won't. The gold tassels are earned by getting good grades. So some students really care about this and they pursue so that when they graduate, the provost will say, name, summa cum laude, or maybe just magna cum laude, or just cum laude. These are Latin phrases for with honor. Well, if you're going to earn honors, who's going to give honors? The teachers do, by grades. So let's suppose you do B work and I give you a B. That's justice. If you do B work and I give you a C, that's injustice. If you do B work and I give you an A, that's also injustice. Aristotle makes the point. Notice we use the same word in Greek and also in English. We use the same word, injustice, for giving too much and giving too little. What we ought to aim at is giving what is right. So we spent a long time on the virtues, but we can complicate things a great deal more. First of all, Aristotle says not everything is subject to the doctrine of the mean. There are some actions that are just wrong. You don't say, am I getting my adultery just right? No, all adultery is wrong. You don't try to get the mean. And there are some things which are just good, and you can't be too wise. So there are some virtues which are not subject to the mean, and some actions which are just wrong. Also, notice that the various situations that Aristotle pointed to are all part of life together in a healthy community, the polis, a city, from which we get the word political. So for Aristotle, ethics and politics are not two different topics. They are two different topics that intermesh. You can't really talk about the good life for me without talking about the good life for my community. In order to do well, we need phronesis, or practical wisdom, that adjusts for different life situations. If you're young and you have expenses of a family, you need to give money. You're a landholder, you give money to the community fund. Some years pass, your children grow, your farm is much more productive, you've gained a lot of wealth, and you're still giving the same amount to the community fund. In the first case, you might have been regarded, you should have been generous. But now, when your situation has changed, you're not generous anymore. You're still giving the same amount. So you need phronesis, you need practical wisdom to tell you how much to give at what time to give. Aristotle also talks about friendship. One of the greatest goods of living in a city is to have friends. But there are different kinds of friendship. There are friendships of utility, where we get something out of it. The student who, some of you know, the student who's really good to study with because she's really smart and you'll do better. There are friendships of pleasure. He tells lots of great jokes. He's just fun to be around. These are what Aristotle calls, these first two, are accidental friendships. The cause of the friendship can come or go. If the person isn't useful anymore, if the person isn't pleasant anymore, the friendship can come or go. And so they are lesser types of friendship. The better type of friendship is the friendship in the good, where both of the friends love each other for what he really is and what he should become. This is the best friendship, the friendship in the good. And Aristotle says it is possible for friendships in the good to end, just as the others two end. But the friendship in the good only ends when your friend turns his back on pursuing the good, when he becomes a scoundrel. And you would do your best, to help him avoid the way of error. A true friend helps the friend become what he should be. Only when he goes off, as we say, goes off the rails, very far off, then we would have to terminate, with great pain, have to terminate such a friendship. I've just begun on Aristotle. There is much more to be said. We'll come back in our second lecture of the week. Thank you.